over the disappearance of British toddler Madeleine McCann nearly 15 years ago. The 3-year-old was reported missing from her family's holiday.
The disappearance of Madeleine McCann from a Portuguese holiday resort has baffled detectives for 7 years now.
After nearly 2 decades of silence, 2025 has delivered a seismic jolt to one of the world's most haunting mysteries. Madeleine McCann, the toddler whose disappearance gripped global headlines in 2007, is now at the center of a chilling new development. What was once a trail of false leads and fading hope has been reignited, not with closure, but with controversy. Behind the headlines, disturbing details are beginning to surface, forcing the world to confront a brutal question. What if the truth was never meant to be found? Stay with us as we unpack this explosive development. The vanishing trail, the unfolding twists in Madeleine McCann's case. Nearly 18 years after 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from a holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal, the case that once seized the world's attention has taken yet another unexpected turn. At the heart of the investigation stands Christian Bruckner, a convicted sex offender and burglar who was reportedly near the resort when Madeleine disappeared on May 3, 2007. Back in 2020, German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters publicly named him as the prime suspect, stating he had compelling evidence to believe Madeleine was no longer alive. Yet, despite the bold claim, the case against Bruckner appears to be unraveling. Bruckner, currently serving a prison sentence in Germany for an unrelated rape that took place in 2005, has always denied any connection to Madeleine's disappearance. His criminal record and the proximity of his mobile phone to the McCann apartment that night initially raised suspicion. However, Wolters' once confident position has softened significantly. In a surprising development earlier this year, he admitted that there is, at present, no viable path to bringing charges against Bruckner. That means, if no further evidence surfaces, Bruckner could walk free by September 2025, potentially vanishing once more into a secretive life off the grid. The situation became more complicated when, in October 2024, Bruckner was acquitted of several unrelated sexual offense charges, weakening the legal grounds to keep him behind bars. His defense team has long argued there is no concrete or credible proof linking him to Madeleine. And now, Wolters' updated statement appears to echo that unsettling reality. What began as a seemingly solid lead may now be slipping through the fingers of investigators. While law enforcement in Germany, Portugal, and the UK scramble to strengthen their case, time is proving to be their greatest enemy. The evidence remains largely circumstantial, tied together by past crimes, location data, and unresolved suspicions, but lacking the hard proof needed for prosecution. Wolters is pursuing a last resort appeal in hopes of prolonging Bruckner's incarceration. But the clock is ticking fast. Flowing from this legal uncertainty is a broader sense of frustration shared by those connected to the case, especially victims of other alleged crimes involving Bruckner. One such case involves Hazel Behan, an Irish woman who claims she was raped in Portugal in 2004, just a year before Madeleine's disappearance. She believes that a more thorough investigation into her assault at the time could have prevented further crimes, including, possibly, Madeleine's. In response, she has filed a complaint with the European Court of Human Rights, alleging negligence on the part of Portuguese authorities. Her legal pursuit not only adds another layer to Bruckner's shadowy past, but also underscores a systemic failure that may have had tragic consequences. As of April 2025, with Bruckner's sentence nearing its end and no new breakthroughs announced, the search for answers has grown more urgent than ever. Investigators are under pressure not just to close one of the most haunting cases in recent memory, but to do so with truth, clarity, and justice. Meanwhile, the public remains transfixed, hopeful that after so many years of false leads and dashed expectations, the truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann will finally come to light. But before we dive into the tangled web of suspects, investigations, and long-lost clues, let's take a step back and retrace the night it all began, when a little girl vanished without a trace and the world changed forever. Unraveling the night Madeleine disappeared. It was May 3, 2007, when the sleepy coastal town of Praia da Luz in Portugal would be thrust into global focus. The McCann family, on holiday from the UK, were staying in a holiday apartment at the Ocean Club Resort. That evening, while Kate and Jerry McCann dined with friends at a nearby tapas restaurant, just 55 meters away, their 3 children slept inside the apartment alone. At around 10 p.m., Kate returned to check on them, and Madeleine was gone. What followed was not just a panicked search through resort corridors and local streets, but the beginning of one of the most perplexing and emotionally charged missing persons cases in modern history. Within hours, Portuguese authorities began a formal investigation. But with no sign of forced entry and few clear leads, the case quickly spiraled into speculation, finger-pointing, and emotional chaos. The McCanns' decision to leave their children unattended sparked a heated international debate. While many sympathized with their heartbreak, others questioned their parenting choices. This scrutiny unfolded in real time, as global media outlets turned the McCann case into a non-stop news cycle. From the earliest days, the press circled the family relentlessly, elevating the tragedy into a media phenomenon. Initially, investigators worked with the theory that Madeleine may have wandered off or was taken by someone passing through. However, the case took a darker turn when local police began to suspect the McCanns themselves. Rumors swelled, theories multiplied. Yet with no evidence pointing conclusively to anyone, including the parents, authorities eventually dropped the charges against them, a move that shifted the focus outward once more. Over the years, a torrent of new leads surged in and out of the public eye, some dramatic, others painfully empty. Alleged sightings from Morocco to Australia, claims of trafficking rings, and even whispers from clairvoyants all pointed in different directions. None brought investigators any closer to Madeleine. Private detectives were hired. Volunteers scoured possible hideouts. Time kept passing, but answers refused to emerge. In 2011, Scotland Yard launched Operation Grange, a comprehensive review of the case. Working alongside Portuguese and German authorities, the new task force hoped that fresh eyes and advances in forensic science might break the stalemate. They revisited old interviews, examined cell phone data, and cross-referenced criminal records. Public interest surged once again with every televised press conference or new forensic analysis, but each revelation ultimately ended in frustration. What added to the confusion were the countless false alarms. Every new suspect, every child who resembled Madeleine, every forensic re-examination that promised answers, none led to a resolution. Instead, they extended the pain, creating waves of hope followed by even deeper crashes of disappointment. Despite everything, Kate and Jerry McCann refused to give up. Year after year, they remained steadfast in their belief that their daughter could still be alive. As others grew weary or skeptical, their resolve only hardened. Public support waxed and waned, but the McCanns stayed in the spotlight, fueled by that thin strand of hope that someday, somehow, the truth would emerge. A glimmer of that truth appeared to surface when Christian Bruckner, a German national with a long history of crimes, including assault and burglary, became the focus of a new investigation. At the time of Madeleine's disappearance, Bruckner was living in a camper van in the Algarve region. His presence so close to the McCanns' apartment reignited the global conversation. While still unproven, the links between Bruckner and other unsolved crimes drew haunting lines across Europe's criminal underworld. Though no charges have yet been filed in connection with Madeleine's case, The idea that someone so deeply woven into the shadows of European crime may hold the missing piece to this decades-old mystery is both chilling and oddly reassuring. It suggests that there is still a path forward. Beneath the silence, a name in the shadows. Yet just as hope dared to flicker, the investigation took a darker, sharper turn, centered around a man whose name had been whispered for years but only recently confirmed with weight. In 2020, German authorities publicly identified Christian Bruckner as the prime suspect in Madeleine McCann's disappearance. A man with a deeply troubling past and a long list of offenses, Bruckner had been living in the Algarve region of Portugal when Madeleine vanished. He wasn't just nearby. Evidence places him in Praia da Luz, the very night she was last seen. Phone records confirm he received a call in the area around that time, tightening the net of suspicion around him. Whispers from acquaintances claim he'd even hinted at being involved. It wasn't a confession, but it was enough to jolt the investigation forward. Years of slow-moving legal processes and painstaking searches followed. Authorities combed through locations in both Portugal and Germany, chasing down any connection he might have had to the child who disappeared without a trace. His criminal history, a record that stretches across borders and decades, paints a grim picture, one that seems increasingly difficult to ignore. But despite the hints and circumstantial evidence, the case still lacks the one thing it truly needs: irrefutable proof. Without physical evidence or a clear forensic link, authorities remain caught between suspicion and certainty. Still, for those who have followed this case since that haunting night in May 2007, this development feels closer to the truth than anything in years. It reopens questions that have weighed on many hearts. Could this man have been stopped earlier? Did the investigation falter when it mattered most? The early days of the search were marred by miscommunication and jurisdictional confusion. Portuguese and British authorities struggled to align their approaches. Language barriers, different investigative systems, and an overall lack of coordination caused delays, some of which may have cost critical opportunities. In hindsight, the case reveals just how unprepared international systems can be when tragedy strikes across borders. It's become a cautionary tale for law enforcement agencies worldwide, a lesson in the urgent need for seamless global cooperation, especially when a child's life hangs in the balance. But the McCann case wasn't just shaped by those in uniform. The media played a powerful, complicated role. From the moment Madeleine's photo first appeared on television screens and front pages, her story spread like wildfire. The Find Madeleine posters became iconic, shared in airports, train stations, and news bulletins across continents. This massive exposure kept the case alive. It stirred public sympathy, sparked conversations, and ensured that her name was never forgotten. However, this spotlight came at a price. The same headlines that carried her story also carried assumptions, criticism, and, at times, outright falsehoods. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, found themselves both supported and attacked. Accusations from certain corners of the media cut deeply, adding emotional wounds to an already unbearable situation. The pressure was relentless. Every rumor, every twist in the story became a new headline, often without the facts to back it up. Now, with Bruckner under fresh investigation, the media has again turned its lens toward the McCanns. The suggestion that their daughter might finally be found brings a surge of emotions, hope tangled with years of pain. Relief hovers close, but is tempered by caution. Too many times, leads have ended in silence. Too many moments of optimism have faded into more waiting. Even if the truth comes now, it doesn't undo the years lost. It won't erase the birthdays missed or the questions that have haunted a family for nearly 2 decades. But the McCanns continue to hold on to that fragile thread of belief not just for themselves, but for every parent still searching. Their hope remains a quiet force, pressing forward through every setback, carrying the weight of a story the world has never truly been able to let go. But what if the truth about Madeleine is finally within reach? Could this lead break the silence at last? Stay tuned. What lurks behind the name Brueckner? But just when the investigation seemed to be circling in on something bigger, the focus returned to Brueckner, this time not for what was already known, but for the disturbing depth of what had long been hidden. Already imprisoned for violently assaulting a 72-year-old woman, his history of targeting the vulnerable, children and the elderly alike, continues to unravel. Criminal profiler Mark Hoffman explained that Brueckner's motivations were never rooted in relationships, but in control. He singled out those who couldn't fight back, feeding off power and fear. His pattern wasn't random, it was methodical. One of the most harrowing accounts resurfaced through Hazel Bean, a then 20-year-old Irish woman who had reported being attacked in her apartment in 2004. For 4 agonizing hours, she endured violence that was later discovered to have been recorded. At the time, her claims were dismissed. But in 2010, when Brueckner's name emerged in a major child disappearance case, Hazel instantly recognized him. His face, his voice, the terrifying calm he had displayed. Suddenly, her account could no longer be ignored. Further investigation into his past led police to a decaying property he once owned, an abandoned factory concealing a gruesome secret. Buried underground near the resting place of his former pet, authorities found over 8,000 USB drives. What they uncovered on those drives was beyond comprehension. Countless recordings of abuse, some involving children as young as 12, others featuring animal cruelty, all catalogued, all deliberate. Worse still, Brueckner had been active on dark web forums since at least 2013, sharing twisted fantasies that investigators now believe may have been more than just talk. He wasn't just imagining these acts, he was living them. His history spans child exploitation, adult rape, and serial burglary. Each discovery pushed him further from the realm of suspect and closer to that of a serial predator. Now, evidence suggests he was near the Praia da Luz resort the very night Madeleine McCann vanished in 2007. He had worked in the area, knew its layout, and, according to some reports, had even spoken of his involvement in her disappearance. The possibility is chilling because, if true, it connects years of scattered horrors into a single devastating timeline. Under intense international pressure, German prosecutor Christian Wolters continues to sift through the layers of Brueckner's past. Every piece of evidence is being measured carefully, not just for its legal weight, but for its ability to answer the one question haunting investigators and families alike. Did he do it? And if so, how much more remains buried, waiting to be found? Stay tuned to uncover the full details. The weight of hope and the cost of spotlight. As investigators unraveled the chilling depths of Brueckner's past, the McCanns continued to live a different kind of nightmare, one sustained not by evidence or criminal records, but by hope that refused to die. From the very beginning, Kate and Jerry McCann held onto the belief that their daughter might still be alive. It wasn't just a private emotion, it became a public mission. With their faces etched into press conferences and nightly news, their voices pleaded with a world that at times listened with compassion, and other times with cruelty. What many people forget is that their determination didn't simply fuel a personal search. It helped keep an international investigation alive. And that persistence, unrelenting and sometimes exhausting, remains one of the few constants in a case full of shadows and silence. But hope, when exposed to the glare of public scrutiny, comes at a cost. The same media that carried Madeleine's image across continents often made the McCanns targets. Outlets scrambled to fill airtime and column inches, even when facts were scarce. In the rush to feed a hungry audience, fiction frequently stood in for truth. Assumptions turned into headlines. Theories, however wild, became talking points. And soon, suspicion drifted in directions no grieving parent should ever have to face. Their heartbreak was dissected in tabloids. Their body language was analyzed by armchair psychologists. Their pain was questioned by people who had never met them. While some of this attention helped keep Madeleine's case in the spotlight far longer than most missing persons ever receive, the flood of coverage also distorted the investigation. False leads multiplied. Misinformation clouded genuine progress. Public interest morphed into public interference. With the rise of online forums and social media, anyone with a keyboard could pose as a detective, and thousands did. Tips were submitted, but so were insults, theories, and outright lies. Valuable evidence risked being buried beneath noise. Truth, in such a climate, became harder to find than ever. Still, that same overwhelming visibility is also what kept doors open internationally. Madeleine's image became instantly recognizable in airports, train stations, and online spaces across the globe. Her name sparked conversations in homes, schools, and parliaments. Few other cases have drawn such a sustained worldwide response, and in many ways, the McCanns' relentless outreach forced governments and law enforcement agencies to examine how they handle international missing child reports. But it also laid bare how fractured global systems remain. From the start, communication between the Portuguese and British police forces was uneasy. Differing procedures, language barriers, and territorial tension slowed progress. Some leads were mishandled. Others were lost in translation. Despite the shared goal of finding Madeleine, the lack of a unified strategy led to delays and frustration. And when Christian Bruckner emerged as a suspect years later, these cracks in international cooperation became even more apparent. His movements across borders, his long history of offenses, and the evidence trail he may have left behind all revealed how easily someone can slip through the gaps of disconnected systems. At its heart, this case has always been about more than one missing child. It has become a mirror reflecting the flaws in how we search, how we communicate, and how we protect. The McCanns, while at the center of it, represent countless other families who endure their agony without cameras, without headlines, without support. For every image of Madeleine shared, there are hundreds of children whose disappearances pass in silence. And yet, Kate and Jerry's refusal to give up did more than keep one story alive. It reignited conversations about public responsibility, about how communities respond to tragedy, and about how institutions can and must do better. If Bruckner is ever held accountable, it may bring some form of closure, but it might also inspire changes to how predators are monitored across borders, how survivors are supported, and how families searching for loved ones are treated not with suspicion, but with compassion. A disturbing twist in the Madeleine McCann case. But as the investigation into Bruckner drifted into stasis, the narrative took another bizarre turn, one that would capture international attention for reasons both surreal and unsettling. In early 2023, a young Polish woman named Julia Wendell sent shockwaves across the internet when she publicly declared, through an Instagram video, that she believed she was Madeleine McCann. Her pale blue eyes, faint freckles, and certain facial features bore a resemblance to the missing child, at least enough to draw attention from millions online, and more dangerously, to encourage her claim to grow louder and more defiant. Julia, who was 21 at the time, wasn't whispering suspicions. She was speaking with conviction. She posted comparison photos, old family pictures, and even pointed out alleged inconsistencies in her own upbringing, suggesting that she had never seen her birth certificate and that her childhood memories were fragmented and hauntingly incomplete. She claimed to have been abused, to have gaps in her memory, and to believe that her mother had kept disturbing secrets. Convinced that her truth had been buried, she reached out to the McCann's private investigators and pushed for a DNA test. It didn't take long for the media to swarm the story. Speculation grew online as amateur sleuths dissected her photos, her statements, her background. For weeks, her Instagram account became a focal point for desperate hope, skepticism, and tabloid drama. People who had followed Madeleine's case for years, some with sincere concern, others with voyeuristic curiosity, suddenly found themselves glued to a bizarre subplot that blurred reality with delusion. And while many were quick to dismiss her, others hesitated. Could there be even the smallest chance? After all, the original case had defied logic in so many ways. Could it now offer one final, miraculous twist? But reality hit hard and fast. When the DNA results came back, they didn't just cast doubt, they closed the door entirely. Julia's ancestry showed no links to the McCanns. The results pointed clearly to Polish and Lithuanian origins. There was no British lineage, no connection to Madeleine. Still, the story did not end with a mere retraction or public apology. Far from it. In the following months, what began as a desperate search for identity unraveled into something darker. By April 2024, police had arrested Julia at Bristol Airport. The arrest came as part of an ongoing investigation by Leicestershire police, tied not to her Madeleine McCann claims directly, but to a separate and deeply troubling set of offenses. Julia was charged with 4 counts of stalking, offenses that, according to authorities, spanned nearly 2 years. These incidents allegedly occurred between May 2022 and February 2024, with specific charges tied to actions during January to April 2023 and another from November to December of the same year. While exact details of the offenses remain under wraps, police made it clear the charges were serious enough to warrant her being held in custody ahead of her court appearance at Leicester Magistrates' Court. Alongside her during the arrest was a 60-year-old woman from Wales, whose identity was not disclosed. That woman has since been released on police bail, but the connection between the two, if any, has yet to be publicly explained. Authorities have been tight-lipped about whether the stalking charges are linked to Julia's Madeleine McCann claims or stem from a different thread altogether. Regardless, the backlash was swift. Julia, once seen by some as a vulnerable young woman in search of the truth, was now being painted as someone who had manipulated public emotion and hijacked a painful narrative for reasons that remain murky. Social media, which had once lifted her voice to viral status, now turned against her with equal force. What's particularly unsettling is how such a claim, however baseless, was able to gain global attention so quickly. It revealed just how powerful the story of Madeleine McCann remains, how raw the public's emotional wound still is, and how easily misinformation can blur into obsession when hope and trauma intertwine. The unrelenting search for truth. And even as the strange saga of Julia Wendell faded into legal proceedings, the deeper weight of the Madeleine McCann mystery refused to lift, clinging stubbornly to headlines and hearts with an intensity that has only deepened over the years. 17 years have passed since that warm evening in Praia da Luz, and yet the void left behind by Madeleine's disappearance continues to echo in ways both seen and invisible. For Kate and Jerry McCann, the ache of uncertainty has never dulled with time. It has only shifted, some days raw, other days quiet, but always present. The hope of answers, whenever it flickers into view, carries both promise and pain. Any potential revelation could finally give them the truth they've been chasing, but also force them to face the darkness of what might have truly happened to their daughter. This haunting need for resolution isn't confined to one family. Over the years, the disappearance has grown into something larger, a shared sorrow, a symbol of both vulnerability and endurance. Communities across the world followed the case not simply because it was sensational, but because it exposed something deeply human. Our need to understand the chaos that can steal away a child in a blink, and our instinct to rally behind those who suffer the unimaginable. What makes Madeleine's case especially powerful is its ability to bridge continents and ideologies. Her story stirred parents and politicians alike, spurred reforms, inspired new protocols, and brought strangers together under the unspoken belief that children should never vanish without trace or justice. And even with advanced forensics, surveillance tools, and cross-border cooperation, the case has remained largely unresolved, reminding us how fragile and imperfect even the most determined efforts can be. If Christian Brueckner is eventually proven to be involved, something investigators continue to explore, then the implications will ripple far beyond a courtroom verdict. It would reshape public memory of the case and prompt difficult discussions about responsibility, oversight, and missed opportunities. The possibility that a known criminal might have evaded justice while key clues went unnoticed casts a harsh light on early mistakes made in the investigation, especially the slow coordination between Portuguese and British authorities. Those first few hours after Madeleine vanished were critical, and yet miscommunication, jurisdictional friction, and assumptions led to delays that experts now view as devastating. Witnesses weren't interviewed in time. Locations weren't secured. Rumors overtook facts. In the years that followed, calls for reform became louder. Experts and advocates pushed for the creation of international rapid response units for child abduction cases, teams trained to cross borders, interpret data quickly, and centralize information in real time. Because in a case like Madeleine's, every second matters. And yet, with every passing year, the scale of the challenge has only grown. The amount of tips received, from supposed sightings to anonymous letters, has overwhelmed systems built to track leads. In a world dominated by social media and global information flow, even well-intentioned outreach can muddy the truth. False hopes, misdirections, sensationalism. Still, the story endures. Not just because Madeleine's face became known around the world, but because her case reflects larger truths about how societies respond to tragedy and how they fail. The missing child posters, the media campaigns, the waves of speculation and solidarity, they tell a story not just of one girl lost, but of how a single event can trigger a worldwide search for justice, for change, and for meaning. As new technologies enter the conversation, facial recognition, digital tracking, offender monitoring, debates grow louder about how far we should go to prevent another case like this. But what do you think? Could smarter tech have saved Madeleine, or would it just open a new set of troubling questions? The shadows beneath the reservoir. Just as fresh whispers began circling, investigators quietly returned to a barren stretch of land near Portugal's Reignited Dam, roughly 30 miles from where Madeleine McCann vanished in 2007. The search, far from speculative, was precise and deliberate. Police cleared the area and drilled 8 deep holes, a sign they weren't chasing shadows but acting on something specific. Reports emerged of a relevance clue discovered on site, though authorities offered no hint of its nature, fueling quiet tension. Bags were seen being carried away, but no confirmed link to Madeleine's remains was made. The search extended beyond a body. They sought electronics, clothing, perhaps something hidden beneath years of silence. Christian Brueckner, long considered the prime suspect, had a chilling history of recording attacks. Former associates even claimed a firearm and camera with disturbing footage had been discarded into that same reservoir, though such claims were treated cautiously. While the forensic materials were shipped back to Germany for testing, another strange thread reappeared. Julia Wandelt, a Polish woman who had publicly claimed to be Madeleine in 2023, was arrested at Bristol Airport and charged with 4 counts of stalking. DNA results had already disproved her claims, but the case showed how far its echoes reached. Back in 2007, the sleepy town of Praia da Luz had become a media storm. Kate and Jerry McCann's emotional pleas gripped the world, and the photo of Madeleine's eye condition became unforgettable. Yet by that August, suspicion turned inward, and Portuguese police shifted their theory toward a tragic accident rather than abduction. But what do you think investigators truly uncovered beneath the reservoir's silence? A breakthrough or another haunting dead end? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.